Can you distort my voice to hide my identity? Like
Yes.
Darth Vader?
I could.
That would be awesome.
But like,
Let's be honest. Like, what identity are you protecting?
My reputation.
Among who?
Everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, what if people knew that I thought these things? Like, do you lie about the things that you think to strangers?
No, but there's filters as to how much they'll hear.
The power level filter?
Oh shit, I used a group 3 opinion with group 2 people.
Yeah. Like,
No.
too based.
No, I'm pretty open, but there's some issues that are like, I don't know how much people want to get into them.
Yeah. I mean, what about people you're like close with? Like, do you have any vaxxed friends?
Yeah. Most of them.
Most of
Like
them are,
most people are vaxxed.
but like happily vaxxed.
Basically none of them.
No. Like,
But I keep some of my concerns to myself and talk about that amongst anti-vaxxers.
just keep the peace.
Because it's like I don't want to make them feel bad or make them. I'd be nervous.
You took the juice.
Like too much. Like come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Come on. It's not just us.
Yeah.
It's there.
They know.
Just the sports people collapsing on TV
Yeah.
by itself.
Yeah.
Like you see that maybe once a year,
Yeah.
and we had like hundreds of examples.
Yeah.
So come on. Like, and everyone knows, unless except for that like 20% that's in total denial.
Yeah.
But everyone knows.
Well, I
And
think
even the people at work, like they're all vaxxed except me.
Yeah.
And 2 of them have openly been like, I wish I hadn't gotten it. And we even know, like, even 1 degree of separation or 2 degrees of separation, you probably know at least several people, which should not be the case
I know
if
at
it was
least
that rare.
I know at least 4 people that had strokes or heart attacks that are 40 and
Yeah.
were otherwise healthy.
And of course, vasculitis, that's so rare. We've never seen that before. Oh, but here it is.
Kids have strokes.
Kids have strokes. It's
kids have
normal
strokes.
because they're playing video games too hard. Or it's because of the climate change.
It's because of all those eggs they eat for breakfast.
Yeah, they ate too many eggs for breakfast. So
Too much sun.
there's something.
Everybody knows.
Everyone knows.
Yeah.
Some people's heads are buried in the sand, but easily a majority. And that's why the booster rate is like extremely low. You got some true believers, or, you know, maybe in some workplaces, like hospitals and stuff, you still have to have it. So like there's some people who are kind of in that situation, but no one else wants to touch that shit.
What do you think about the mentality of like noticing?
I love noticing.
Yeah. But like,
Only right wingers do it, and you're not allowed.
well, no, like, so there's noticing with parentheses around it, and there's just noticing. Like, for example, I noticed that the EPA changed their carcinogen profile on vinyl chloride the month before there was a giant accident associated with vinyl chloride.
Okay, but you can only notice.
But I also noticed that they never, like, it's been the same definition in terms of, like, it hasn't been touched for 20 years. And so, like, the month before there's, like, one of the biggest spills ever, they change. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of like noticing
Yeah.
that they changed the definition of vaccination.
So that's just it. You, like, by definition, the NPC will not notice. They'll just accept new programming. Only the intellectually curious person can ever notice anything. Only notice the glitch in the matrix or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they're not just downloading the new, like, current thing.
So how do you think like a rigorous person being aware of the pattern of noticing, or like the nature of noticing patterns, how do they temper that? Like, I think you mentioned the Jeep example, where it's just like you never notice how many Jeeps are on the roads until you buy a Jeep, and then there's Jeeps everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So You can use raw data to kind of assuage this, but I find in what you could argue as a post-truth kind of world, like in a fact-checked world, data isn't always enough to accurately reflect reality. And so, like, we notice there's a bunch of Jeeps on the road, but somebody's like, there's always been Jeeps. So, like, kids have always had strokes. And you're like, wait a second, it's just maybe we're at the age where people are having heart attacks and strokes. Maybe this always happened and we just go like, oh, that's a one-off. Like, who fucking cares? And then all of a sudden there's many Jeeps on the road and we're like, fuck, there's a lot of Jeeps here. Has there always been this many Jeeps? And they're like, you just started noticing. And then you go like, well, what are the Jeep sales? And you look at the Jeep sales and you're like, that doesn't account for how many Jeeps are in this geographical area.
No, because you're talking about like not noticing more, you're noticing them like at all.
Yeah.
And really, like, the whole world is just screaming noise, and it's like your perception has to structure things in some kind of meaningful way or some order of relevance, because you can't, like, there's too much data, but most of it is worthless and has nothing to do with anything like in a meaningful way. That's why they can't program robots very well to like interact with the world, because it's like consciousness that's got to build this system. So like the Jeep had no meaning before, then all of a sudden it does, and then it's like it's part of the way you're structuring reality. So it's like it just was irrelevant before, but now it's a piece of the puzzle. And it's like that thing. I don't know if this is 100% true. Well, there's different kind of examples you could say, like Russians, for example, don't have like a word for blue, but they have like light blue and dark blue. Doesn't mean their like idea of blue is better. It's
they
just
can't see the color.
It's structured differently.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if the thing I said, I'm not sure if it's true, but there's the other thing where it's like when ships came to
South America,
it's like they couldn't see them until they were like talking to the people, kind of, because they don't have like the concept for it. And same thing with like the natives, if they're they have a word for many and one, but they don't have like numbers,
like Deca septa systems.
Yeah, like North American kind of natives or whatever. And so that in turn is structuring reality. It's like what you're putting your relevance and meaning into. But
because the first one goes beyond the linguistic theory of like, I don't know, like naming an object gives it like brings it into reality, like the Enkidu theory or concept. So like, like wizards create things by naming them.
Well, it's true, because that's identity, and that's the foundation of logic. So it's like the foundation of any kind of proposition making.
But like the people in South America knew there were such thing as boats. They knew there were boats.
Yeah.
Okay. They just never seen a boat, and they knew things could float on water, and they knew that they probably knew there were such things as sails.
And this isn't even though just a matter of like individual perception and things. This is like, it's like that Thomas Kuhn book, what's it called? The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. He was kind of like a postmodern kind of like, not a rationalist type, but he was kind of describing like the sociology of the development of science, I guess you'd say. And it's like paradigms, right? And you've got a paradigm. Anything outside of that paradigm is like by definition rejected. So it's like a scientist, if somebody gets a data about a ghost in the modern world, they'll be like, well, that's outside the paradigm. That's, that's garbage or whatever.
Yeah.
Or we just don't know how to put it in the paradigm. So it's like not on our radar really. But, so that's the same thing with the perception. Like you have to structure things you have to have the theory to understand things, which is why like empiricism is such a hollow kind of philosophy, and all the like serious science people and like really shallow atheists and things are like, empiricism is like where truth is at.
Yeah.
But it's like empiricism, it's not just about seeing data and then like knowing something. You have to understand that what you're observing either is an example that confirms or disproves whatever you're talking about. So there's like still the theoretical framework, even in like the structure of empirical observation. And yeah, that goes down all the way to like this thing we're talking about with like Jeeps.
Yeah.
Oh, all of a sudden you notice it, or like
I'm more interested in the ability to error correct myself, being aware of the noticing. Do you know what I'm saying?
well, are you noticing something stupid that's not worth noticing?
Yeah, no,
Or are
I-
you noticing something important? That's another problem with the right. I assume we're recording, and I'm gonna spend most of this time complaining about my friends on the right.
Yeah.
Because they're crazy. But one of the things is they notice things that are completely irrelevant, stupid, wrong-headed, and foolish and distracting fundamentally.
Taking the heels off of the M&M mascot. I'll never take Tucker seriously because of that. They're trying to desexualize the M&Ms.
No comment. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. It's too dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, but like it's a perfect example.
But it's also like the rabbit trails and the schizo tendency to chase after things that don't actually matter or are so big they don't matter. Like the big grand conspiracy that's just untouchable and rules over us.
The unfalsifiable.
Yeah, it's like it's a way to escape any kind of responsibility, because somewhere in the middle between the insurmountable, invincible conspiracy powers that be and the very bottom of all the little examples that kind of consume your attention. Because like we were saying, the world's full of noise. You have to focus on something kind of useful. And the right gets just suckered in with the noise like crazy. It's kind of just a product of politics, but it's especially annoying on the right because that's my side. And it's frustrating because so as an example, for weeks and weeks and weeks, Alberta conservatives, like kind of in the less obvious scenes, they've been obsessed with this smart city thing.
The 15-minute cities?
No, smart cities.
Oh.
There's a connection, but it's not really
I thought they were the
identical.
same thing.
It's an old thing, but that's the thing. They're like, we need to denounce smart cities. And look, all these Alberta cities are signed up for the smart city program.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, first of all, take 30 seconds to actually learn about what you're talking about. This is a 2017 program that was awarded in 2019. So it's over. It was basically a few Alberta cities applied for money for stupid crap. Like
Grift.
Olds applied for like a smart health monitoring program, like a few $1 million or something. And of course, all the industry Canada goes to big eastern cities.
Yeah.
So that's what it was.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's over. And it was like total worth like tens of millions of dollars, like millions, not billions. Small, irrelevant, typical Ottawa trash. But the right has like huge groups within Alberta politics have made this their priority. They don't even have the fucking dates right.
It makes me think of something that I wrote down, which was what, and I think it's more clear on the right than it is on the left. This concept that like it's more profitable to complain about the left than to do anything about it. Like there's no sort of like imagine like all the government funds that flow for doing a feminist postmodern analysis of icebergs and like the grants and the money that flow for that. Like you have,
It's retarded. It shouldn't exist. Are you going to put any time into fighting it?
Yeah.
No, you'd have to be insane.
But-
But you're going to put a hell of a lot of time into getting that grant for yourself and being part of the system that creates more grants,
Yeah.
that perpetuates itself. So you get more government employees, more leftist artistic parasites, more cronies, more losers,
But it's-
more bureaucracies jerking themselves off and feeding their own ideology with the money they've been allowed to dispense.
But it just means it's a solved system, because even if the rightists or right wing people were in positions to actually do these analyses, if there were grants to even exist to like fund their analyses, it wouldn't attack the power structure as it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess maybe at some point, you can go to like a fully, like you end up having government funds to analyze how degenerate homosexuals are or something like that. So maybe this, like a postmodern analysis of icebergs as it applies to, feminism and sexuality, is the price that we pay today for the the structures and the things that existed 50 years ago, of people just being like, look at the homosexual, look at how degenerate he is. Like, we gotta figure out how to stop this. Like, look at the degradation of society. Like, there was money flowing into right-wing interpretations of reality. And now the only money that flows to right-wing interpretations of reality is for the purposes of
complaining. Who's the best complainer? And that's the inevitable problem. Like, honestly, the one who wants to be left alone tends to lose against the one who wants to like dominate you.
Yeah.
And
why is that?
There's a balance there. Like, whatever. I get politics is dirty, but if you wanted to protect yourself, you would have to participate in some way, not to overthrow the system, because you got to have like a multi-pronged attack. But if you did want to put the work in, you could influence or somewhat divert some of these things. You won't be able to beat them because they are inherently what they are. So they're gonna, like, the institution itself is gonna shape the incentives around it. And then you've got the self-selection people who are tending to go in. But it's like some of the conservatives getting involved now in like their local school boards, which basically has never happened ever.
That's nice.
Which that's just kind of a little example, but
start.
You're not going to overthrow that system with that strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you can partially shield yourself from something that would have been 100% on you before, and now you're maybe blocking half of it or whatever, which is a relative improvement. It's not very good. I mean, when it comes to the schools, the real answer would be pull the
funding, get rid of it,
pull the funding, pull your children out.
Yeah.
Now, minor sidebar, I mean, there is an issue because your enemies are sending their kids there, and you got to live with those people too. So even if your kids aren't in the public schools, you have a strong incentive to try to make the public school relatively less terrible if you can. Like the kind of control and indoctrination and programming that goes into the public school system, I think, is the number one problem with, Western social democracy. But, yeah, so like some level of participation while you're kind of like removing yourself from the system, I think is going to be helpful either way. But again, if you want to be left alone and do your life, that's a huge drain on your resources and time. Whereas the scumbag parasite, that is their life.
Yeah.
So it's not distracting them from something. That's what they want to do. They want to be that little petty tyrant with their little fiefdom, that little scrap of power that they couldn't earn through their own merit, but they have to seize through some political committee or some budget, like taxpayer funded budget at their disposal in the bureaucracy. So these people in general are going to be basically the worst, and they just have more time and interest.
It's like being on a condo board, but like all the decisions that you make somehow lead to a 3,000% increase in trans identity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the person that wants to be left alone, much like the COVID stuff, has to define their line. Like, what's their line? And what are they willing to do when that line is crossed? What's their...
Well, we know kind of what the line is, and we were talking about this earlier today. But basically, and I mean, they won't defend it very much, so
Yeah.
it's a squiggly line.
Yeah.
But right now, the line is like
Trans-
1990s Canada.
Yeah. People are, well, like we had protests here in Calgary over Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yeah, now they're going to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but
What about that-
Jayati threatened to use the street harassment law. Which I don't understand how they could ever get a conviction on that.
Yeah, I guess.
Unless you just pay it, but like
Well, it's like a jaywalking ticket, dude. Like, it doesn't matter.
it's like $500.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any of the tickets yet?
No.
I've gotten 6 or 7
Really?
for harassing people.
Did you?
I'm a danger.
Seriously?
I'm a pervert.
Did you like...
No, I'm just
Did you wolf whistle?
I don't know if
some girls?
you're joking, pretending not to be joking about asking if I really did it or if
I could see you maybe getting 1 or 2 somehow.
no, I'm not a harasser.
No?
Although you can't spell harass without her ass.
Yeah. See? Yeah. Did you get one of these? No, like, I don't think they've given out any of those tickets yet. I immediately figured that this was somehow an attack on Italians.
I think it. Well, yeah, it is. It is
It's
a
an
bigoted attack on Italians, I guess.
And most immigrants.
It kind of became clear to me when she said, "Oh, well, we'll use the street harassment law
Yeah.
against these protesters." I'm like, "Oh, obviously."
Yeah.
So that's what it's about. It's like because you can't.
It's a cudgel.
Yeah, it's a cudgel for.
Whatever they decided it's for.
Yeah, if someone protests perverts dancing for children, I think the protests are probably a good idea. But, obviously it's a threat. You like, oh, now we've got this law and we can slap fat tickets on all these people.
I don't know. Like, so there was that high school kid who who's apparently emancipated from his parents. I don't know whether that's convenience for this trial or like the set of stuff that he's got going on. But he was expelled from a Catholic school in Ontario for insisting that there are only 2 genders. And they're like, "Oh, well, we have trans suits.
Well, I
here.
think
You have
it was,
to recognize."
I think to be more specific, I think it was over. Now I might be wrong. I don't know. I'm an idiot. I wasn't even really paying attention. But I think, just to clarify, I think they were doing like the trans bathroom thing. Like that stupid issue had hit the school, and he was like the one kid who's like, "No, it's stupid," or like anyone who said anything.
He was the
So I think he got suspended because that counted as bullying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, he set up the protest for it. And then he got suspended because that was considered bullying.
And then he got arrested because he went back to school.
And then he went back to school, and yeah, I think he got arrested.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've got the story right.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Seems close enough.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. How wrong can we be? I'm 100% sure that's pretty much how it happened.
It is in my recollection.
No, that's a bizarre story.
Isn't it?
But
Dude,
the Catholic schools,
that
that's
kid's
another
fucking-
example. Like the Catholics, they don't really. They've got a squiggly line too.
Yeah.
And that's why the Catholic Church is suffering so much, because it's gone so soft and leftist, I think. And the people that are usually like switching out of Protestantism to Catholicism, it seems to be they're interested in like liturgy stuff, like
Yeah.
tradition and kind of the style of
It's
it, I
just
guess.
grander, dude.
But I don't think a lot of them realize just how, well, frankly, kind of like
Paused.
leftist and disordered and twisted the whole Catholic Church thing is.
Yeah. These aren't the people that would excruciate you.
Are we allowed to talk about this?
Excruciations? Yeah.
Or like,
There's no Catholics to fear. But like the Catholic Church is kind of sort of full of pussies now. And you know, like it has, like, the second people found out that the Catholic Church was hiding pastors, fucking kids, it was over for them.
but even like, I don't even like, even before that, it's like the line had been crossed because they had like,
There was a lot of
there was like
don't
the gay clubs and stuff at the Vatican. It's
Yeah.
like, what?
There was a lot.
What's going on over
There was
there?
a lot of don't ask, don't tell. But like, people would look past that. They would see it as degenerate, but it wouldn't, like, the Catholic Church will always be the butt of the joke of people fucking kids.
So do you think that,
Like, do you want to be?
because sometimes the right likes to talk about the problem with like a lack of manliness in society, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of merit to the idea, but specifically for, like, do you think church would be different if it was led by like Conan the Barbarian kind of guys versus,
I think.
well,
I think
like kind of more like softer,
you do have that.
effeminate men?
you do have that.
Where? What? Conan, like priests?
Top G University, Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is the new Conan, dude. For
Gotta be kidding.
for a generation of lost men, he sure is, dude.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's just like, oh, do we fix these people with religion? Like, we can, dude.
No, you do.
No, you need the troubles. You can't.
No, you like.
you need the troubles.
See,
dude.
it's the problem that, like, instead of a Conan, like Conan the Barbarian, like from the books, as a hero, or someone like that, the lost sheep turned to a clown like Andrew Tate.
He's as much as a clown as Jordan Peterson, dude.
No, Jordan Peterson's way better. And Conan the Barbarian's better than all of them.
Jordan Peterson lost what little respect I had after he started. Because, like, I was like, oh, yeah, check this guy out. He's heckin' based. And then he was just like, oh, yeah, like, my daughter's a complete fucking, like train wreck. And I'm going to post, like, photos of her. And I'm going to go and get addicted to drugs. And it's someone else's fault. And I'm going to keep grifting. But then he was like, a Canadian professor felt it incumbent upon himself to tell Americans to write their elected officials to have them go and do something about Iran. I mean, we're done here, dude. Shut the fuck up.
Whatever. I don't even, like, who cares about that?
You love
It's-
warmongers. You love it.
No, I think he's too dumb. Like, I think I think his political opinions are kind of too dumb. Like,
Okay.
he's better when, like, he has a lot of good interviews.
Yeah.
So that's,
True.
I think, kind of the main interesting thing about him.
Okay.
And sometimes he's especially since his drug addiction and his big sickness and stuff.
Yeah.
I think some of his interviews like have been like terrible.
Okay.
But when he has good interviews, I think they're still really good, and he gets some interesting guests. Even when I don't agree with them, like they're interesting, right?
Yeah.
But in general, like his own specifically political opinions are pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And NPC-ish even though sometimes there's this appearance that it's like carefully thought out.
Yeah.
But there's no economics there. There's no like idea of property rights there. There's no
Sort of, but like you can't walk around and talk a bunch of shit about Solzhenitsyn and Nazis and the state and all the evils that they do.
Well, yeah, he
and
gets
then,
it, but it's like on a different level. It's like it still touches on the political, but it's like when he talks about the
oh, you're saying people shouldn't do these things, not we need to limit state power.
well, no, I think in a way those are the same issues. They're just it's what's the word, like fractal or layered or like kind of like in a way they pyramid on themselves, but there's like the stacks. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
There's
I don't have the words
it's
for
the
it.
lens.
But like just on the level of political philosophy and political theory, he's bad. But I think like when he talks about that other layer, he's really good.
Okay.
And he did that more back in the day. Like obviously as he's become bigger, people become more interested. Wherever you came from, the bigger you are, the more interesting supposedly your political opinions are supposed to be. So that's kind of happened with him. And of course, like when you're feeding into that audience, you're more likely to just talk shit about things you don't know anything about. Like I can't stand how bad the economics is on the right. And he's kind of, I don't necessarily think of him as a right winger, but he's kind of associated with a more perhaps conservative end of things. But he's kind of an example in that way. Like just a lot of ignorance about political and historical issues.
I don't know. He props himself up on being very distinctly.
And then compared to Andrew Tate. So after that thorough review, whereas there is no redeeming value to Andrew Tate at all.
Tell me the difference between clean your room and fuck bitches get money.
Promiscuity is degeneracy.
Don't fall in love with them. It's not promiscuous.
Yeah, it is. It's promiscuity.
Look, you want to be a top G?
No.
You want to get money?
Being a top G is gay.
What color is your Bugatti? Is a transcendental question. Which is like, there's a Bugatti in all our minds of like our will made manifest and our measurement of success. What color's yours? Like genius. Dude, they're both grifters, okay? They're both grifters.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But one's vastly, one at least has some redeeming aspects.
The only redeeming...
Or maybe, to be honest, I don't even know anything about Andrew Tate.
Me neither.
But promiscuity, I think, is just rotten, and it's a terrible idea of manliness. Conan the Barbarian wasn't really promiscuous.
No? But he got bitches.
He had old-fashioned values.
He got bitches, though. Okay, he got bitches. You know it, I know it. Okay? So, but when I think of a Catholic church like led by Conan, I don't know. I think of like Russian and Greek Orthodox churches. Actually, I think of Islam.
So the religious leaders themselves, I don't know, but
General butt naked.
would you, so because there was a like almost 100 years ago, there was that like muscular Christianity movement.
Sweet.
And that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Buildeth of men.
But, you know, there's like an evolved idea of like the warrior and stuff. And there's like a crude version of that. But I don't know, like say just physical strength or like masculine virtues like leadership and like a Conan.
Yeah.
And remember, Conan, we're not talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, the 1980s Conan movie.
Yeah.
Talking about Conan from the books.
Yeah.
He's very smart.
Clever.
He's not like a bodybuilder. He's like a barbarian. He's like sleek like a tiger.
Yeah.
And he's a leader of men. He's like a problem solver. He's an explorer. He's yada, yada, yada. And I just think, you know, there should be some more like manly heroes. Even like 80s action stars.
Well, what about Jocko? That fucking guy. He's like, oh, I'm an ex-SEAL. You need to wake up at 4 a.m. and do push-ups.
Like who are the male heroes of our popular culture now?
We're outside of that popular culture. We have no idea. I think their heroes are people like fucking Andrew Tate.
Well, I liked like Jean-Claude Van Damme when I was growing up.
Yeah,
when I was a kid,
Zoomers,
like the first time I saw a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie was in the 6th grade.
You know what we should? I would love.
So how old are you in the 6th grade?
What? So 11, 12?
Okay, so like I thought he was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Even though those movies are terrible.
Yeah, but like he was just like I'm here to kick ass, you know, or he's like well, I mean he played Guile in the Street Fighter movie who says how much he hates fascists.
He felt like an adult I could look up to, like I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Like someone who could
solve
like
problems.
Fight and, you know, protect the people he cares about and such. And so and like he made me want to be an adult. And it seemed like growing up the whole world was like structured for adults. And it wasn't about pandering to me. Or like even Ghostbusters. So, you know, Ghostbusters, it was about adults. And I was a kid and I wanted to be them. And I guess they reboot or whatever Ghostbusters again. And the heroes are kids. And it's, of course they are. Because everyone wants to be a fucking kid. And that's why when you go to like Infinity War in the theater, it's full of like beardo adults who love the MCU. They also love science.
And the vax.
And you don't see any kids there.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
Well, so we're talking about because the first thing I thought I was like, man, we should kidnap a Zoomer and just pepper them with fucking marketing questions. Like, who do you like? Who do your friends like?
We should. How do we do that? Do we know any Zoomers?
Do we know Zoomers? I don't know any Zoomers.
I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah.
My opinions are irrelevant.
All my friends' kids are like in university. So I guess they're some of them, but like they're all based. Like it's not the same. Like I don't have like progressive friends with kids. I have progressive friends, but they got no kids. Do you know what I mean?
So yeah, we need like more hardcore dudes.
Yeah, no, all the kids that I know are based.
And I'm not saying I'm a hardcore dude.
They're pretty hardcore, dude.
Well, on the grand scheme of things, like maybe
I think you may not.
we could all do better. But like, where are the really hardcore dudes? Like in the churches or the or in politics or and I mean even the women aren't good either. Like where are the high quality like people on the right? But
Kanye West.
Kanye West is terrible. He's a clown.
Dude, anytime
and it's just embarrassing to defend him.
I have for the past 5 years. This is well before this recent noticing by Kanye West. I've defended him because a lot of the people on the left hated him, and I'm a contrarian. And I was like, you know what, dude? He's not that bad. He's just saying some shit. He's off his meds. Leave him alone. And
and he's just the kind of guy. Like you got to understand. They're like
he just thinks a certain way, dude.
Well, and he's like, you're not gonna tell me I can't say something.
Fuck you.
Yeah. So it's a fuck you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, substantially, and it should be kind of in that who cares kind of category. But
well, he touched on some crazy deep stuff that people aren't.
What did he touch on that was crazy and deep? Did we talk about this once before?
Yeah, we did. That like all slavery is voluntary.
Yeah. Etienne de la Boetie, if you put it on that level. And again, it's like the layers.
Yeah.
There's like, there's a physical coercive dimension to it, but in another sense, there's like
ultimately the expression of will and self-control. Like unless you're like,
and it's a point that can be argued and debated.
Yeah.
And Kanye's not really in a good position to do it, but he's sort of like the poet, quote unquote. He's like presenting something in a different way. But that's a little too intense for our society. It's a little too intellectually complicated. And of course, Etienne de la Boetie's book is one of the greatest of all time.
He's saying there is no such thing as compulsion to these people. And they're not ready to hear that.
Well, what do you mean by compulsion?
That self, like, if you can act, you have complete control over your, like, unless you're tied down, like and you can still struggle. And they're just like, oh, but like, I'm still tied down. It's just like, well, like, imagine at any point,
Yeah,
like,
on
they're like,
some level, you can always
you
agree
gonna-
not to go along with it.
are you gonna bite your tongue off? Like,
Where is your line?
where's your line, dude? And like this idea of the line, like,
It all comes back to the line.
yeah, like, what are you gonna do? You won't do shit. You're gonna go.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, to say where is the line, obviously, is a question that requires a theory, a philosophy,
Yeah.
or even some intuitive principle. Maybe you can't spell out the whole system, but again, some core principle that you can understand at least at some level. And the right is really confused on that. The left, it's easy because it's just like more, progress more, quote unquote. And that's why there's no real limit to what they do. Like it's inherently like an all-consuming thing.
Yeah.
And then the right appears to lack an identity kind of at this point, or what it awareness of what it should be about. And I think it's the society reflects that.
It's strange that Peterson touched on that, and I think most people understand the metaphysical concept of the line better because of him. He talked about how they're like, well, how did people get here? And they're like, oh, they just drew a line, and then they stepped over the line, they drew a new line. Like, move back. It's like
that's what Jack Bauer says in the first episode of 24 season 1.
Yeah.
He says, the people I busted, because remember, some people are skeptical of him because didn't he bust some dirty agents?
Yeah.
In kind of the lore of before the show starts. And then he says something like, they weren't bad people, they just compromised, which made it easier to compromise again. Yeah, the wisdom of have we ever talked about how brilliant I think 24 is? We won't talk about that now necessarily, but we might talk about that someday.
We touched on it. I think I cut it out, but like, I don't like talking about it because it's too depressing. It's too depressing.
Because there's no show that's as awesome.
No, there will never be another 24.
And some people would hear us say that, and they're like, that show's either not that good or that show's not good.
They don't get it.
They don't get it.
They don't get it, dude.
And because they don't have the theory. They're not watching it with the theory we're watching it with.
Are you saying they lack a critical eye?
Something like that. But that show is awesome.
It makes me think of...
It's possibly the most hardcore libertarian TV show ever made, whether intentionally or not.
Yeah, I've been listening to an audiobook, Empire of the Summer Moon, and it's about the Apache in Texas in like 1880, and through 1843, 1880, and dude, it's fucking crazy. Like, but there was like the last big Apache leader, a guy named Quanah. He was the son of this rich family in Texas called the Parkers. The Parkers were very famous, and there's a story about how he went. He finally gave up. He went on the reservation, and he built a big house, and he was seeing dignitaries and all this other stuff, and so he was doing well for his tribe, and regardless of everything else. And somebody went over there, and they're like, "What happened between the Apache, like the natives, the Indian, and the white man?" And he goes like, "What? Where did this break down? Couldn't we have cooperated? Like, there was cooperation, but a lot of those like the Tonks and the other tribes that would fight the other ones was just to get revenge. Like, they only allied with white people to get revenge against their enemies. You know what I mean?" So he goes like, what what's the deal? And he goes, okay, well, I'll tell you what happened. Come with me outside. So he takes him out to like this bench and he sits him down and he goes, okay. And he sits down like right beside him, touching him. And he's like, move over. And so he moves over and he gets up and sits down and he's like, move over. He does this all the way to the edge of the bench. And then eventually he can't move over anymore. And he's like, move over. And he has to fall on the ground. You know, like and I think there's many concepts or ideas of like the line pushing. And I don't know if it's just winners do it or losers tolerate it. Like the loser mindset of like, okay, well, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just leave me alone if I just do this. Because like we talked about the idea of the win. Like even the hollow wins are wins. You know?
Well, it's kind of what I was talking about before, where like you don't overturn the system, but within the system, a win can be valuable, even a small one. But I guess you kind of have to know.
Do you think
you need the theory to put those on a scale?
Yeah, the white people had manifest destiny. Yeah, that's what fueled their winning.
The whitey?
Yeah. They're like, that's all ours. You just don't know it yet.
Well, every society or every belief system or whatever needs a vision of what their victory looks like.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like you've got no, and that vision might, be good or bad.
What color is you Bugatti?
It needs to be like that ideal or something that you're driving towards.
Yeah. So what the people that want to be left alone, is that so their idea of winning is being left alone. Like what is
I think for some people it ends there, and that's why it's not really good enough.
What is winning
as a motivator?
Yeah, what does winning look like to Aaron O'Toole or Andrew Scheer?
Pension.
Same as Jagmeet. Just getting that pension, buddy.
Pension.
Government pension. Soft, cushy job.
And to go on TV sometimes.
Oh.
Because if you're the official opposition all the time, you still get like a lot of microphones and cameras on you.
True. Do you think that Jason Kenney's going to become a pundit for like some...
No, he's an advisor at a law firm now.
Yeah, but do you think they're going to have him on like the CBC or like Globe, like some like CTV, maybe. And they're like, we're gonna cut over to the opinion desk and we'll see what kind of hot take Jason Kenney has about this, like Jason Kenney's corner. And he's like,
thanks for joining us.
We all just need to compromise. We all just got to get along.
He's the worst.
Do you think Daniel Smith is winning?
So that's a complicated question. So and this can segue into another thing that drives me nuts about the right or so-called right or whatever, but to address the question, again, depending on what you mean, but I think there's a meaningful sense that we can say she is winning, but I don't think she's doing a very good job. But, the proof is in the outcome, like, because the general idea, this is the general idea from the political people I've talked to within the party. So right or wrong, this seems to be the prevailing view. Mm-hmm. She can't do anything. She basically has to do the reach out to kind of that middle road of the voters, so that she can win the election, and then once you're more stable, then you can maybe do stuff more easily. So they said, like, again, right or wrong, that's basically the idea. So if by apparently quote unquote moderating up to the election to try and, win over Calgary or whatever, the battleground seats, then you secure the victory and then whatever. versus like delivering some hardcore stuff like now. And it depends how you define the whole hardcore thing, like what actually you want out of such a government. But so that's the idea. So in that sense, the proof as to whether her strategy is good or not, or good enough, is if she in fact wins in an election that may be coming up in a few months. So again, right or wrong, maybe that's the right strategy. Maybe it's not from a purely win or lose standpoint.
I guess because
in a May election,
she doesn't have to get people to go, like, she doesn't have to motivate people to vote for her. She just has to motivate like people to vote against Notley, which is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And you know, cynical, but like that's just where we're at. And
no, they've had some good ads. Again, just from a purely political propaganda point of view, the UCP party has put out some decent ads against her.
Like, they get it. They understand that you have to tie your opponent to the feds. They're like, check it out.
And every terrible economic kooky idea that might threaten your well-being, when your well-being is already under threat from those people on multiple angles, from inflation to embargoes against your province to caps and limits and punishing like control, blah, blah, blah.
Do you think that there's
decent strategy, or so it seems?
Do you think there's NDP voters in Edmonton, like right now, writing up policy papers or like posting on Twitter, just talking about how important it is for Alberta to like transition its oil field workers to janitors? Yeah, like they're digging it.
So on that transition thing, Kenny actually made a good point. I'll give him credit.
Oh.
He said, Alberta produces like energy for, it's an exporter, like a big net exporter, obviously. There's only like 4.5 million people here. So we export to all these places. You can't replace that kind of industry serving yourself with solar panels and retrofits and clean energy transition, like, because you aren't going to be like your own demand. Our oil industry didn't serve Alberta. It's like, that's why we produce so much. Like, sure, we have a lot of quote unquote bad emissions, but obviously that's because we're producing energy for way more people who basically can't produce their own or can't do it cheaply. Which just makes sense. And that's actually efficient. And that's actually less harmful to the environment in terms of resources being consumed and waste being produced. So yeah, the whole thing is retarded. That's kind of a wonkish point from Kenny that actually is like open shut case.
Yeah.
So it's I like that argument. But yeah, linking the Notley and the NDP to the kook feds.
Yeah.
And Alberta Institute put out a pretty good thing that was like, they went back through their old NDP documents like in 2016 and pulled out all the just transition stuff they had in there by that exact term.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Nice. So the polls seem to like kind of favor Smith, in my opinion. I think Smith is going to win. How much she wins by, like, does it even matter?
You only need a few. Yeah.
You think Don Braid's gonna, fucking what's his face? Are they gonna bring those expunged MPs back in?
One of them's in the cabinet now.
Okay.
The other guy's still out of the party as an independent. And he says he won't join because he doesn't see eye to eye on Smith's whole philosophy about taxes and spending. He says they're spending too much money. They won't cut taxes. He says they should cut the corporate income tax on small business, which is like 500 or lower, 500,000 or lower income now. He says that should be zero in Alberta. So it's small because the Alberta portion is already really small on small business, like 2%. But still, his idea is like,
none.
From a standpoint in taxing and spending, he doesn't like it, and he says like they need to kind of address this. But Danielle she's not into that anymore, and she's open about it.
Okay.
She says conservatives don't want spending cuts, and she doesn't say it, but by implication, they don't want tax cuts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is. But she's forthright about it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's true that conservatives are like, my government services are too important.
Yeah.
They don't understand how
Yeah.
don't even get me started. And then the government itself, like the bureaucracy still runs everything.
Yeah.
And they're not giving up any money.
Yeah.
And even if there were going to be cuts, you wouldn't see that talked about
Yeah.
before the election, because again, their idea is that we have to appear moderate.
Yeah.
And not like whatever crazy people are in some people's heads.
Well, it's pretty clear. You just have to be a little more hardcore than Jason Kenney. Like, tough,
Well, no one liked Kenny.
Yeah, but in order to keep your base happy, you just have to be the same level of hardcore. But, like she backed off this whole amnesty for the Coots blockade and the other protests and any kind of COVID.
Yeah, because she doesn't want to be seen as interfering. And that's one of those things that, like, the left wouldn't shy away from any of that.
Yeah.
And it's not even out of bounds.
It doesn't matter. She already fucking tapped on that, and then she was still accused of fucking interfering.
Yeah, so it was totally unnecessary. She didn't get any advantage from it. And, like, what exactly is the problem anyway?
Yeah.
The boss of the prosecutors is your justice minister.
He's appointed.
Attorney general. Like, you're the boss, and it's up to you as to, like, public value in the prosecution and, like, or encouraging, like, approaches towards that. Because guess what? There's basically the issue with the leftist prosecutors themselves putting their own thing. But you're a kook or you're out of bounds if you talk about that, or that's different somehow.
Yeah.
But again, if someone even perceived to be on the right, and of course Danielle's basically a left-wing person, but she's on the right side or whatever, however you define it here.
Okay.
So she can't do that because that's interference.
Well, so the CBC broke that story, right? They're like, someone from Daniel Smith's office contacted the Justice Department and told them not to fucking do whatever.
It was like a fake story anyway.
Well, that's the thing. She came out and they're like, no one fucking did that. The CBC won't retract it. Okay? So they're like...
No, they just had to clarify that they hadn't actually seen anything.
Yeah, we've seen no evidence that this is true. So, but that's effectively the same fucking thing. Printing allegations, regardless of whether you saw the proof or not, doesn't make them not allegations. Like, you're basically spelling out this attack.
Well, it died pretty quick.
This attack is as bad faith as you think it is, and I want them to be sued. Fucking sue them.
Yeah, and that's. I think maybe that's kind of like, I understand that, although I wonder if that's just like makes you look like weak at that point, because it fizzled out. It's over. Some of the stuff.
Wait. If we're gonna be upset about China interfering with Canadian elections, like, that's a real thing that people are annoyed with. With an election looming and the CBC literally saying this person is circumventing the justice system blatantly to the point of ethics breach.
You know what I think would be better than, suing them, kicking them out. Being like, okay, we're kicking out Trudeau's CBC because it lies, it prints lies, and then boom, and then just stick by it. Don't let them back in until, like, you get what you want. Wouldn't that be better than suing?
What do you mean kick them? Kick them out of what, dude?
Like the press conferences and stuff. Don't.
Okay, but this story didn't need a press conference, dude.
No, all of the press conferences.
It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop from them slinging basically, like, slanderous
It probably would be more useful, though.
I think suing is better
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
because it has an independent, in the same way that Trudeau's enforcement.
But then if you lose, you look retarded.
Well, don't lose.
And then you'd have like discovery issues and stuff.
Yeah, don't fucking lose.
I don't think there's any good value in it if you start thinking about some of the issues. And plus, it'll take years. So even if you do win, no one cares at all at that point. And no one cares now.
To me, it's
like NDP's trying to keep it going. Don Braid's trying to keep it going.
Going to war on a
no
fucking
one cares.
pommel horse.
She's had a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just fizzling out, which I think is interesting and amusing. No one's going after her for like the things that she's actually kind of bad on, but like everything's just kind of like
they're like, she's gonna gut healthcare.
I mean, I think
yeah,
I don't know.
What else do they got?
Yeah, that's the big thing now. Like they're gonna make you pay for all your healthcare.
Yeah,
it's like it will never happen. It's like these right wingers who are like, they're gonna jack up, or they're gonna have a PST. It's like, no, they aren't. That's what their carbon tax was for.
The UCP are going to introduce a PST, huh?
That's what a lot of the crazies think.
Since when did the NDP care about a PST?
I mean, that's what... Well, okay, sorry, I'll need to contextualize it more, and maybe now is not the time to talk about it, but it's... obviously, there's a lot of the discontent with the current UCP party, even obviously after kind of non-shake-up and Danielle not like being as hardcore as people want. So a lot of those people are like, yeah, just watch NDP or PST.
Yeah.
And
it's
like,
to
no,
undertake
there's not
the
going
base?
to be a PST.
No.
They'll do anything else they can to scrape money out of you, but they won't introduce a PST.
Okay, so I would like to formally...
And NDP, Notley wouldn't do it either.
I would like to formally put out an assertion that Scott Moe is not based.
No, he's terrible.
And he's a bit of a bitch.
He's a loser.
Dude, so he at least had the good sense to do that Saskatchewan Sovereignty Act, which the NDP supported, which is crazy.
Which is funny.
Pretty
now,
funny.
the Saskatchewan NDP uninvited Jag Meat from their event.
No way.
Yeah, this was a while back, but I think they're probably like kind of old school
Farmers Party.
social credit kind of farmer guys.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome.
And I don't think Jag Meat's like super popular.
Cool, now get rid of drinking.
Because they don't... You might. It was the same. It was like that in Saskatchewan pretty much forever. Like vote NDP provincially, and vote Conservative federally.
Yeah.
And Jag Meat's like #1, like defender of Ottawa's expropriation and plundering of the nation. So I don't know. Maybe that's why. But maybe it's something else.
He has neither shield nor sword in this scenario, but like Mo, so like a lot of people got pretty fucking worked up on the digital ID thing. Like, do you think that's is that an inevitability in the same way that, like, we here in Alberta have that My ID or My Alberta ID. We have a digital thing, so you have to like enable it. You have to sign up for it. You have to do all this shit.
Yeah, you have to distinguish between.
It's
the digital ID on the one hand, and then the digital ID, like the tyrannical version that people imagine. That's more like a vaccine passport or like a social credit kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The digital ID, like getting an account to sign up to renew your driver's license on the internet. It's like people want that.
I don't care.
And I'm not saying it's good.
Yeah.
But I'm saying. It's the same thing with debit cards and the like cash-free society thing, and it's like
I've heard this argument.
People, like it or not, people want the convenience, and they don't see it as the threat to themselves the way people who are skeptical of state power tend to.
Yeah, it's like the cell phone. People
and then look how easy it was to do the vaccine passport, and I don't think we've seen the end of that.
No,
but that's what I think of when I hear like digital ID as a problem.
Yeah.
Like the signing up to get your registration or I don't even know what it lets you do. Sign up for your welfare on the internet or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's just government stuff. Hell, everyone's got the freaking CRA account online.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Which led to,
And it's all like your digital ID. Like, these things just don't link together.
yeah.
And they probably never will because there's issues. But vaccine passport, is pretty simple because it's just based on a healthcare number and like a name, basically.
Yeah.
But that's the digital ID thing, and that's, for that reason, a bit of a distraction.
So so that there was an article put out, and they're like, yeah, you gotta like digitize your records and stuff like that. And so some people were complaining. They're like, this is it. This is like Trudeau's attempt to institute a federal entity with access to provincial data, health data. And they're like, oh, we got to make it so that this digital data can go from one province to another. And the only way to facilitate that is through a federal program, right? Because the second a bit leaves Alberta, it has to pass through the Ottawa in order to get to Saskatchewan, right? And like there can't be like an agreement between provinces without the feds involved, right? Like they have to get their fucking stink on it.
They'll do it for the money.
Yeah, like 2%. Dude, 13% of our GDP goes to fucking healthcare. 13%.
Like the surgeons are like autistic, God complex. So you'll get good service, but like the system is horrible, and like it's weird.
Yeah.
I interacted with it recently after a few years, and it was like, wow, it just seems so Stone Age and terrible.
I saw an article today, actually. It was in order to enroll in Columbia University, you have to have all your shots and all applicable boosters. You have to be max vax to go to this university.
Yeah, well, it still prevails. Like that requirement still prevails in a lot of these really like upper class, more exclusive things, because the progressive is tends to be more from the upper end of society. And this is part of that whole progressive like technocracy kind of humanism kind of philosophy, and so it's part of it's a way to stratify.
Is the right winger willing to commit fraud to get higher education?
Maybe some of them, probably most probably not.
Do they understand what it is to live a double life? Like,
no.
Do they understand the concept of...
Well, I think a lot of them do. A lot of people talk how they can't like come out of the closet with their views.
Well, like the simulacrum, like the idea of performance as identity. I think about like how a lot of Jewish entertainers take Anglo names in order to be less like... They're like, what's your name? It's like Leibowitz. Like very... I kind of think about why aren't like... So like... Are right wingers going to be willing to do that? Are they willing to like live like Gattaca? Do you know what I mean? Where they,
well,
you remember that movie?
Like say you're like the French Resistance thing.
Yeah.
It's like they were in front of you, but you didn't know they were there.
Yeah.
So you have to, like if you're against the religion, the orthodoxy, the progressive social justice, cult of expertise, like whatever the system is we have, you got to be like, you're like living in a foreign empire. And in some sense, unless you totally martyr yourself, there's always going to be that split, that two sides.
Yeah.
Living within it, and then like the subverting side.
Like, are people mentally prepared to live as spies?
They have to be.
Yeah.
The people on our side have to be.
Yeah. Like, you are fighting a cultural leviathan.
Yeah, and that's exactly the right word.
And it has the power of entropy, which is beyond any act whatsoever. It's sort of like wealth accumulates. Do you know what I mean? Like, and eventually it becomes so large that it like just takes on its own power. And the idea of like cultural
It's like
wealth,
a force unto itself. It's
Yeah.
like a demonic force.
or it's an entropic system. Like culture will just keep pushing as far left as possible. And it's like, what are you willing to talk? Like, what's your line? When are you gonna? So you could say like, I'm gonna infiltrate these institutions, like the Marxists did in the '60s, and understand that these are the new. Like, this is how you do it. You become director of education. You become, maybe you sit on your fucking school board, okay? But like,
Yeah, I think
just
that might be right.
extend that 20,000 feet up, and like, are you willing to do that? And most people, no.
So is it
Like,
it correct that that's like how you have to think of it? Because I kind of think it is. Like I think like you said, Leviathan. I think it's like it's like a force unto itself. It's like it's not just the people shaping the institution, or like the institution shaping the people. It's like the animating force of that cycle of like
ethos.
Yeah, it's like Frankenstein's monster. It's like out of control. It's like it's like a monster. It's a demon. Like, those are the words that I think about. And so you are living in like the empire of evil. How do you respond, or how do you live, or what's your approach to that? So spy, right? You're saying like, live like a spy in a sense.
You have,
and that's what I mean by like the two
remember,
two sides.
Yeah, you remember the beginning of The Incredibles?
No, I haven't seen it in like 20 million years.
Well, so here's basically Superman working as an insurance adjuster, right? Like he's a spy. He's deep in the system. Like,
he's like Clark Kent Superman.
Well, like, so he's got all these superpowers, and they're like, you can't be a Superman. And he's like,
but is he against the system or for it?
Okay, so, well, he's for his family.
But is he like a threat to the system?
Absolutely.
Because Superman's kind of there to like protect in a way, right? Truth, justice in the American way. Whereas he's not like, he's not fighting Rome.
Superman's deeper, dude. Like,
okay,
Superman represents the concept of.
So anyway, I guess go back to the explanation about
Superman is morality because he is force. It's crazy. So
I got to think about that.
Mr. Incredible, basically Superman, but he's superpowered, and he's got a wife, he's got kids, and he can't be a superhero. It's illegal. He's got handlers, and
sorry, who's got handlers? The Superman?
Yeah,
the Incredible Man.
Yeah, like they can't. They're like, man,
they're under regulation.
Yeah, it's like Watchmen,
or it's like having a gun permit.
No, it's like
a gun permit in Canada.
It's like being an ex-spy. You know what I mean? Like, they keep.
Oh yeah. Keep tabs.
Keep tabs on you.
See what you're up to.
Yeah, like how are you doing today, Johnson?
They do that in Canada.
Yeah. So if
you have firearms.
Oh yeah, they check in.
They're allowed to. In practice, would they? Like
spot checks, like prisoners.
In theory, they're allowed to like make sure you're storing things, and they don't need to like not. Or I believe they're just allowed. Like,
who does that job?
Well, that's what I mean. It probably basically never happens.
And how long do they keep it?
But that's what Mr. Incredible is. He's like a gun. He's like a weapon.
Yeah.
Or a living weapon
and
under
so
control.
Yeah, they repurpose him. So he's got to work at an insurance company or something like that, right? And so he's a spy in the system, and so like he sees this old lady, and she's like, "Oh, I lost everything. Oh, I'm fucked." And he's like, "You need to fill out this form, and you need to fucking submit it to this person, and then you'll get all your money back." Which is what he does. He's compelled to help people regardless. He wants the best for people. He wants them help. And not because it's an evil insurance company, not because it's an old, like maybe a little bit of it's an old lady, but I assume he would do it for anyone. This idea of just doing what you can, that which is within your power. And he suffers the consequences of it. He gets yelled at for telling too many secrets about, how to actually navigate the system of bureaucracy, like how to subvert the structure in a way. And like, so you can either be that guy, the guy who's like the good guy on the inside, the spy, or, because I don't think that's going to work. I really don't. And I think it's just like the idea of the transfer of wealth. Like, how do you transfer wealth in society? There's only 3 ways. Well, 2.
Steal it or trade it, or give it away.
No, I mean, like as a class, when it's not just because all the baby boomers died and all their kids got their money. So it's like, as it's statically here without waiting 30 years for the money to move around, how do you actually move people in and out of income brackets? Well, you have a plague or you have a war. Like, that's really about it. Or you have a complete crash. Like there's no other systemic way to really affect everybody with having a bunch more money. Like, basically, you got to have a bunch of people die. That's the only way money really moves. And maybe it's the same thing for fucking Leviathan. I don't know. I'm not advocating violence, just to be clear. But I do think ignoring the power of violence is for fucking children.
It's kind of like the meaning of defending yourself.
Yeah.
And well, a lot of people go after kind of the simplistic libertarian view for this reason. But in my opinion, it's not really incompatible. Like, it's still just a question of like, what does self-defense actually look like? And you have to remember, again, with a functioning moral theory, like, what is actually being done to you.
Yeah.
And you are under quite unjustified threats of violence just by living in this empire. Like, that's what empire is about.
Yeah.
So now, it's not to say it's easy to answer that. What is the self-defense, or like, what is that in the concrete? What does that look like? But you got to approach it the right way. You have to really understand. It's like you said before, you don't realize how much they hate you. And some of these people, they want to crush your way of life. They want to erase it. They want you impoverished. They want you like desperate, begging, maybe even dead. Look at the vaccine mandate, virus panic situation. Like, that's what's really at stake here. Put it in proper perspective. The threat against you is like serious.
Like, do you consider your enemies ontologically evil?
Well, it's kind of a complicated question, but like, I think evil is kind of a force, like a metaphysical force. Like, sin is kind of like a force, but they're not like, people are not demons. The same way people are not angels. You interact with those forces like the same way empire has a force.
Yeah. So people should not feel any ethical reservations for pretending to be vaccinated in order to pursue higher education.
I would say no.
Okay. So it's all above board, and it's not just, it's doing what you got to do in order to pursue like maximum like happiness.
Well, I wouldn't say happiness is the goal, but I know what you mean. Like, I just wouldn't use that word.
Maximum well-being, or you could argue that,
yeah, like
I'm not hurting anyone.
Again,
by
your
this.
vision of victory.
Yeah. So if you want to go to these universities, like, spend the money, get a forged card. Who cares? Say you got it in Russia, say you got it in fucking Vietnam. Like, it does not matter.
Yeah, I don't really see it as a moral problem. Like, it's
Unless you have a principle about it. I have a principle, and I will never forge it.
yeah, and that's fine. And like everyone has weird lines, but they've got them. They just move a lot, or sometimes they're weird. Like there's weird exceptions carved out and things, and that's okay. It's perfectly fine. But on the because you can add limits to yourself for other reasons
anytime.
but that's different than
I simply have a preference for
like-
it. That's what the principle is.
yeah.
My principle is my preference. But if I had a kid, I would let that kid suffer in order to maintain that principle.
That's how it is for everybody.
And I would let 1 million people die.
Well, it's you ask me what gives me the right to kill this billion people.
Yeah.
But the real question is, what right do I have to allow them to live? That's from Warhammer.
Yeah. Like,
That's a hilarious quote.
that was the guy who basically he fucking scorched a planet because there was some heresy on it.
Yeah, which is hilarious. The Warhammer 40K world is hilarious and like so over the top and ridiculous that it's just, how can you not love it?
I love it.
And it's actually popular. Like it has a lot of games.
Well, I was talking.
People are into like the game, but it's got like, it's a whole franchise or whatever. But it's definitely cool and absurd, and the Empire is hilarious.
Yeah. So like it's supposed to be this mockery. Like it's a satirical mockery of what humans can do. Like,
Yeah.
and in many ways, like what humans want to do and what they prefer. And like,
It's like humans cranked to 1 million.
dude, it's
Like on the scale.
it's like the that quote about Japanese people. They're like everybody else, just more so.
Yeah. The dial turned up.
I only know that quote because of fucking hardcore history.
The humans, or the race of man, or empire of mankind. So the Empire is the bad guy. I think that's one of those like evil forces
Yeah.
that's like behind the earthly powers, so to speak. And so you're in that. You're in and the world's all about like a spiritual geography. So like there's like Canada in a sense is under dominion of like Leviathan.
It's in the thrall.
Yeah. It's under the control of the dark side.
I thought of a very interesting, and this ties in pretty well. I thought of a theory the other day because I was, how I kind of said like, money doesn't really transfer in, like, power can kind of transfer and trickle down inside of these institutions by who's voted in and stuff like that. But like that true power of like, people who are kind of beyond the rules of the state, like people are just like, what, fuck you, I'm just going to go hide on my yacht, or I'm just going to go. I think ESG and like the green movement is an attempt to create a new class of wealth in the same way that they want, like, actually, it's not even.
It's like the ultimate crony play.
It's not even like, so for example, just because you run Halliburton doesn't necessarily mean that you're untouchable. But if you're vice president, you're sort of untouchable in the same way. So they need political and market power. So in order to become a true broker in these things, you have to figure out who's on your team and promise them things and give them those things. So like they become part of the keys to power. So when you're able to like get people to ignore the fact that, taxation doesn't change the weather. You can bring your buddies in. You can, and not only that, you can get people you don't know to give you stuff in exchange for some shit that isn't yours, like all cronies. But they also get to go along for the ride with you. They get to get their own, like they get a taste. They get to get their dick wet and kind of just go to these fucking meetings at UN security councils and just be like, yeah, it's very important that we like give money to Africa in order to fight climate change. You know, they get to like
schmoozing.
Yeah, they get a little bit of prestige out of the deal. And meanwhile, you're just feeding them money, feeding them contracts, feeding them all this other stuff. And so if you were trying to take over a system or like a structure, or better yet, like tamp down certain things, you're never going to take over tobacco. You're never going to take over oil. You're never going to take over, electricity production, like PG&E. You're not going to take over.
It almost doesn't matter what it is. You just want a piece.
Yeah.
And this is a good way to fleece the system.
How do I get
this? Is an efficient way to be a crony. It's a bottomless pit as opposed to a dead end because everyone's begging the government for money for stupid crap.
I think it's different. What I'm touching on is not just cronyism.
But this also has the religious angle to it.
Yeah. Like it's
like the death cult aspect.
Yeah, like I want a class of people, like the new aristocrats. Like I want us to say
new chosen people.
Well, you can't. I noticed you just said chosen people there.
Am I in trouble?
Sell down, Kanye. No, I think like that could be happening. I think the compulsion is to like bully your way into these structures and get them to spread money among all your buddies. So they're like, oh, it's sort of like saying like, oh, it's July 4th. We should all have flags. I just so happen to own a flag factory. This is like, oh, this stuff is very important and we need to fight climate change. I happen to run an NGO and so does my buddy. And we should both.
Yeah, well, it is different. It is big. It's bigger and it has like it's basically eschatology, like end of the world. Like, what do we have to do to be reconciled to God or Gaia, Mother Nature? Like, what do we have to do to avoid the final judgment, which is like the destruction of the earth?
Well, that's the exploited mechanism, right? The guilt.
Yeah, so in a way, that's probably why it's different, because that's not necessarily an argument that's easily available for some of those other things as much as you might want to try to make it. But look at the apocalyptic hysteria that goes along with the climate change death cult and environmental and none of the, like, when I look around and I think like, what are the big environmental problems? They don't seem to be like important, because climate change has sucked all the energy out of it because it's easy. You don't actually have to do anything.
Yeah.
And there's no way to test your results as to whether it was useful whatsoever.
We're long dead.
And like, again, end of the world stuff. So there's a lot of money up for grabs. Whereas all the other things, they're like, they're hard. Like, I don't know how to deal with them, obviously, but I'm sure nobody really does.
Yeah. You must be seen to be doing something.
Yeah, and your friends won't get rich off it.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, no one wants to deal with that.
Dude, imagine we all got together and we just pretended like we ran, SpaceX type companies. And we were like, we're going to get hit by comets. So we just need like one comet to hit the Earth. And then we can be like, this is an existential threat to humanity. The UN, every country needs to pay a tithe to me and my buddies, and we'll go up and we'll set up a shield. And like,
we need
rockets.
Star Wars.
Yeah, we need to be able to deflect meteorites like NASA already did.
Yeah, we need $1 trillion.
Yeah, and we need to do it every year and every day. And I need to tell you about.
We need Star Wars to protect ourselves against the Russians.
So it's like if I wanted to take over a system, And I had this loophole of like, oh, I could guilt people into it. I could, and it's not just taking over a system. It's like overthrowing a system. I can't just like, it's not like Putin where I can just be like, you're my buddy. You're in charge of the oil companies now.
Yeah.
They're like, well, how do I just like make it so that oil company doesn't fucking matter? Well, I still have to keep the guys at the bank happy. I still have to keep the guys in the media happy. And that's about it. I'm done. I only got to, those are my two keys to power. I don't even need the fucking military anymore. I don't even need resources. I'm making my own. And I'm making those companies pay for it. If you were to be super cynical about the approach, it becomes like fucking hilarious how this works.
I think
a new aristocracy, like a new class of aristocrats, just like, do you think Al Gore knew this? Do you think, because like Al Gore moved the needle, dude.
Yeah, he was in the system. He knows like how it goes. And is he a true believer? I'm sure in some way you could say he is. But on the other hand, like, the true believer aspect is colored by, I believe, economic incentives pretty strongly, especially when you're a dirtbag by default.
The
like,
Suzuki phenomenon.
A lot of people, just like they give themselves that moral conviction behind it. And again, like, you can't really be held accountable because there's no way to measure anything. Heck, I think in a way it sort of goes along with a lot of these progressive sort of programs because it's never enough, right? By nature, it's never enough. Like harm mitigation for the drug problem, and you just need to harm mitigate more, even though in all respects you appear to be having no effect whatsoever.
Somebody
but
mentioned
the resources are good, and you've got the moral argument, and you can't really be, again, measured, and there's big money up for grabs. In fact, there's more money the worse the problem is. So of course,
do you think government heroin will be as bad as government weed?
I don't know. If you were looking for the good heroin,
the gray market,
I assume you'd probably want to, and of course, you're not necessarily worried about long-term effects or like something going wrong because you want your fix. You probably want the dirtiest, quickest stuff you can get.
Somebody mentioned that, so they're like, okay, we're going to so Canada, well, BC, I guess only, is the new red light district when it comes to this stuff. And so they've decriminalized possession under a certain limit, as long as it's not within a school zone, I think is the other thing that they added to it.
Nice.
And somebody was like, yeah, we're going to keep these guys out of jail. I'm like, they're not in jail, dude. They've just got a bunch of fucking...
Exactly.
They've just got a bunch of fines.
But we just got to harm mitigate harder.
Yeah. So, like, there are, like, it's a Mont Bailey. Like, so the whole thing, if they go like, oh, it's good for these people, and like, they're going to do it anyways, you might as well let them do it and make it safe. Like, they get to go like, oh, it's going to be less of a burden on the system because now cops aren't fucking doing whatever. And it's like, cops aren't going there and busting people with like possession. They're literally pulling over like scumbags who are breaking into cars, and when they search them, they have fucking drugs on them. They're like, okay, got you for B&E, got you for possession, got you for whatever. And they're like, okay, we'll just take the possession off the list. It's not going to stop that interaction. It's not going to stop that cost of resources. And so they get to retreat and say, this is about saving lives. What is to be done about the drug problem? And like the core idea is just like, well, who really does drugs and why? You're like, that's a pretty complicated fucking question. And the why is super complicated too. So that sounds like a lot of problems. So like, just like the scientists, just ignore it. And you were like, oh, that's a ghost. Fuck off. Let's just make it illegal.
They won't overdose if they get it from the government.
Yeah, they're like safe consumption sites. It's just like,
Clearly, one or two of the overdoses were because they got some bad crack last night from the guy in the alley. But they won't overdose if we give them a perfectly controlled batch.
so how many people in Japan do you think overdose of drugs every year?
I don't know, probably a relatively low number.
Very few, relative to
Sure,
population.
it happens.
But you can't even you can't even possess a whiff of weed there. Okay, countries that take their drug laws super serious don't have these kinds of problems. Granted, in my opinion, they don't have the same level of freedom or like kind of an analysis of like, look, weed doesn't ruin.
But you know, weed. You might say weed haven't really taken. You know, whatever that is, haven't really taken our drug problem, whatever that is, seriously for a long time, and yet there's clearly a level of dysfunction that's unfolding that's different in our lives, I would say. Like the street people and like the takeover of the transit system, I think is quite interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Like people huddled in the corner because crackheads are in like the station, like smoking crack. And this guy's like, I have the right not to breathe secondhand crystal meth smoke.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay. I think
Sure.
that's fair.
Okay.
And people getting stabbed and hassled and stuff, and they just, because it's like harm mitigation, we can't like deal with that.
You're sounding like Corey Morgan right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm Mr. Common Sense.
Yeah.
I'm an old guy. I'm a dinosaur.
Oh, harumph.
I got a gray hair.
Yeah.
So, but that's an amazing thing. Like, and actually, that's kind of an Alberta politics thing right now, because
Big
they're
deal.
sending in the sheriffs into the Edmonton C trains or something.
Oh, yeah?
And then they're bringing them to Calgary too, and they've appointed somebody at the provincial level to deal with it.
We have a czar.
And, you know, it is, I think it is a problem, and it'll continue to be a problem of kind of the left wing mentality where you don't want to kind of deal with the dysfunction of crime in a way that's even remotely appropriate, even though I basically think the police are kind of negative in the sense of how it operates. I would call the mafia to get crackheads off my front step if I had to.
Yeah.
Or I'd call the Hells Angels to like chase them away.
Yeah.
And they just let public property or like public areas, like with businesses trying to work and like people trying to go to the C train or whatever.
Yeah.
And
What do you think it costs a business to like get? So you're in East Hastings and you're a commercial organization. So like the East Hastings Commercial Board. How much money do you think you got to pay the HA or like?
I don't know. Like, I don't know how that works. Like,
Yeah.
it's bizarre.
Like-
Like it's very, it's like Sodom and Gomorrah kind of thing. It's like very hellish and dysfunctional and like beyond.
Yeah.
It's like the guy possessed by the demon who lives in the graveyard. And it's inherently, it's not that they, like, not all of them are running around stabbing people or attacking people
Yeah.
necessarily, but they are inherently criminal. Like they have to support themselves either by basically spreading disease in the form of prostitution or something, or they're stealing. Like they have to, because they have they don't produce anything. They're either, so they have to steal.
Yeah.
Like they're basically vampires. Like to survive, they have to engage in parasitism. So like that has to be removed. Now it doesn't mean like, you know, go shoot them out and pile them up in a ditch or whatever. You got to deal with it, but they can't just be allowed to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Am I Mr. Common Sense?
That's pretty common.
Or is that too hardcore? Or am I a softie? Am I a bleeding heart liberal?
Well, okay, my bleeding heart goes to like, so the argument that I made that like, oh, these other Southeast Asian and other Asian countries where this is extremely forbidden is fucking haram. You cannot do these things. Period.
What, like smoking crack
You
on the
can't-
sidewalk?
You can't have them.
No.
You can't know anyone that does them. Your family can't do it. If your family does it, they're in fucking trouble too.
That's what the crack house is for.
The whole
Go to the crack house.
Well, okay. But they didn't have to deal with the CIA. Okay? Like, that's the strongest argument I can make about these things. Look at what these, like, the CIA's, they're motherfuckers, dude. They will ruin your fucking day, dude. They are in a mountain right now doing push-ups, thinking about ruining your fucking life. And if they want to, they can. Okay? Like, they will do it. And those countries don't have a kind of fifth column supported by the state to deal with.
Like the drug war?
Yeah,
The drug lords?
They don't understand. Like, they never
Maybe
had
a guy with some heroin in his backpack on the train.
Well, there might be some like Filipino Contras or something like that, but like they don't have drugs to launder the money with.
There's no drug, like the big drug gangs are basically states, right? They're basically like governments, and they're kind of like somewhat amorphous nations, but they like occupy territory and stuff, and they like produce and they export, and they probably don't have that over there.
So
Like they probably don't have enemy rogue drug nation, so to speak.
Yeah, so like how come tourists can even go to Amsterdam to begin with, since it's such anarchy with these drugs?
I don't know.
Well, it's because most people they don't want to get hooked on heroin. And for some reason here, a lot of people do. It's so you could make the argument that like if somebody held you down or was your doctor and gave you fucking heroin and now you're hooked, okay, fine. You're a victim, absolute victim. But the part where you're just like, I think I'll just try some heroin. Those are scenarios where the average...
But don't they have like crackheads on the street over there?
Oh, there's crackheads everywhere.
Well,
but...
So are you talking about like the...
I don't think
the level of the problem in Canada versus like Europe or something?
Yeah, I don't think it's to the same level over there.
Well, and there's a public order issue to that, like how you deal with it. Like you were saying, there's the one thing where it's haram. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
Like you're keeping it on the DL basically. But
Nope.
here we allow it like right out there.
Yeah.
Like it's like an open air
No one gets beat.
crack park.
Yeah, no one gets beat with a sandal for smoking crack on the bus. Everyone's just like, somebody stop him.
And again, whatever, I don't have all the answers, but I think encouraging it makes a difference. Subsidizing it obviously makes a difference. Yeah. And like you can look at the chart, like it's basically the hockey stick graph from when like Vancouver brought in the harm mitigation program, and we're just the same way, right? Well, but you also see like that whole Sheldon Schumer thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that helped people? Do you think that helped the drug users?
You know what I think is crazy is there was a fucking lawsuit. Okay, so while all this COVID shit was going on, everybody was like, you can't force me to get an injection. They're like, yes, we can. And there was the fucking audacity. They're like, we think it's unacceptable for people to have to present a healthcare card to access the fucking safe care like thing. And they're like, oh, they're outdoors, like they don't have any papers. And it's like, no, they set that up for you. Like they go, oh, you don't have a healthcare card? Do you have any ID? And they're like, no. They're like, okay, cool. We'll take you over here and we'll walk you through the whole fucking process. They get them their papers one way or the other. It's kind of set up to do that. And they're like, it's fucking unacceptable for these people to have to produce some form of identification in order to access these services. And it's just like, oh, no, it invalidates your service is what you're saying. And so they upheld it. They said, yeah, you have to show a healthcare number in order to come in here and smoke crack. Otherwise, you'll just have to go outside and smoke crack. Because the cops don't bust people smoking crack in front of the fucking Sheldon Schumer. Like, that doesn't happen.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed to, like, basically touch a criminal who's within whatever 300 feet or whatever of the entrance.
Yeah.
Because they might be coming or going from something they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
So they just arbitrarily define a boundary, but it's like within that boundary, you can basically, like, murder people.
Well,
Because I knew someone who maybe worked maybe at a place like that. And I heard I got the dirt, man.
Yeah. So what's
I know the dirt.
Look, so what's the dirtiest dirt?
The dirt is just like,
this is a whistleblower program.
it's really kind of the idea that it helps anything at all. And it's just almost the banality of it. Like you go in and you smoke crack, and
they don't have
and they give you like, you know, a pamphlet, like talk to these people if you want help with your addiction or something.
Have you heard of
like,
God?
And you know, people here, no, it's like talk to like a counselor from the government or something. Talk to this government employee. And you know, it's like people come in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm really looking for help, but I just need a safe place for now. And they're like, oh, thanks for the brochure. And they'd see the same people coming back and back. And, you know, there's an act that like they want to get better, but that dissolves pretty quick, because then they're like, okay, it doesn't really matter. I don't need to put on a show here. Pregnant, crack addicted teenagers coming in. People coming in with their underage children who are not allowed in there. So they're left outside the Sheldon Schumer while the crack addicted mother is smoking crack in the government provided facility. And this kid is sitting out there like exposed to the crackheads in the middle of the night, who are wandering around like flesh eating zombies looking for their next victim to fund their habit.
Can you imagine the dystopia of
and it
the
keeps
Sheldon
keeps going.
The dystopia of the Sheldon Schumer child daycare?
People working at the clinic selling the drugs.
Yeah. Like
people,
we have a facility next door that'll watch your kid for 20 minutes at a time while you go and smoke crack. Like what if that became the next fight?
Like, it's the worst way I could imagine. Like, obviously, I think we agree the drug war doesn't work very good. Like the typical government war on poverty, on terror, on coronavirus, etc. doesn't usually pay off. But this is just about the worst way I can imagine to deal with a problem like that. And it's just, maybe it's the economist brain and it's so easy and obvious, but I come down to a very simple proposition. And if you disagree with this, you're wrong and you're a bad person. But this is just how reality works. You tax something, you will get less. You subsidize it, you will get more, period. The end. And so what are they doing? Of course they're going to get more. Of course the problem's going to get worse. And then it goes back to the cronyism. There's too much money up for grabs. The industry of dealing with it. Now we're going to have the drug producers. First it was just, well, we'll provide you with the needles. Oh, now we'll provide you with the drugs. Now we'll provide you with a shelter that you can hide in to do drugs.
My real question is, how do I monetize this? How do I monetize those heroin addicts as a private industry? But aside, like, can I...
Lifelong customer. It's worth a lot over time.
But I have to have the government contract in order to produce it.
Yeah, so you got to schmooze. You got to be on CTV or CBC.
I feel like the pharma industry is hard to fucking break into right now. It's kind of locked up. You got to produce some mRNA shit right now if you want to be hot.
Yeah, I saw I saw a couple grifter companies that appeared during the pandemic.
Yeah.
There was a respirator manufacturer.
Yeah.
Trying to meet the shortage of and scam. Like 100%.
Didn't Chrystia Freeland's riding get 10,000 respirators sitting in a warehouse right now? Remember that fucking scandal?
Oh yeah, they always buy that stuff. Like so much crap they buy that they don't know how to distribute, and it's just like such a pile of trash.
Wait a second. There's a surgery you can get for heroin addiction.
Like a lobotomy?
It's not quite a lobotomy, but it's something.
Put a microchip in your brain?
Well, they basically turn off the sensors that light up when you get fucking heroin. I remember there was a famous singer who who fucking got it, and that's how he got off heroin.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah, so like there are surgical interventions.
Is that like Clockwork Orange?
Yeah, it's a bit like that, except they don't.
Or is it different because it's drug addiction, which is like, I'm not saying it takes away the responsibility, but I'm saying like the motivation or like the way it works is maybe.
What if?
Because I think it's still mostly, human choice to go killing people. But it's like almost like you've become the animal when you're like the street man crackhead.
The only way to make their plight worse would be to make the drug addict an identity.
I don't know. Like identity, like my cat doesn't have an identity.
Yeah. But
And
like,
it's like,
you could say, oh, I have an addictive personality. So people recognize the concept or the idea of the addictive personality. But imagine you extended that all the way to, look, I was born this way. I am miserable when I'm not doing heroin. You don't understand. They're like, oh, that's the fault of the heroin. And you were like, no, but something drove me to the heroin.
yeah, sure.
And the heroin, the compulsion to go and do the heroin is an identity. It's a type of people. I'm saying that this is a facetious argument. Okay. So like, I'm just saying we could basically get rid of all these, like,
No,
I
understand what you mean.
Even worse somehow.
No, I think I understand what you mean, but what I mean is like, I mean, a human would give an identity or, assumes one or whatever, but a beast doesn't create one for itself. And that's what I mean. Like the drug addict is like so messed up. Like the hardcore street man drug addict, like the people who literally, it seems like zombies, or they will like attack you like zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's almost like they're like kind of corrupted in a different way, and it's like taking their humanity away. So
So for example, in North America, like this is a one-off, but the amount of people overdosing on fentanyl has risen to
thousands.
A lot. It's a lot, dude. It's like,
and there's hardly anybody here.
Well, you can say these things about
Canada.
because there was always this line that I think about from Chappelle, where he's just like, no one gave a shit about fucking crack until white people started doing it, right? And
white people don't smoke crack; they smoke meth.
Yeah. So now meth is a big, big problem, and his argument is that like it's only a problem because it's killing white people. And the last time I checked, like fentanyl's killing a lot of white folk, and it doesn't seem to hold that people are as upset. Like, do you care that people are like turning to fentanyl?
Yeah, I think it's horrible.
In order to tolerate like existence.
I hate that people lose their humanity like in that way, because I don't know if I can explain the seriousness of it, but I think it's almost like being possessed. It's like the drug is like the demon, and it's turned you into kind of a monster, because you're not like, the mark of civilization is like a future orientation, right? Mm-hmm. And the animal doesn't have that at all. Like there's no planning for the animal, like in the sense that we think we do, or like savings, or that choice factor doesn't come in. And the drug addict is like put into that state, even if you're like depraved and evil in some other way. It's not like the same animal level. I mean, it's still dehumanized, or it's still like demonized or whatever. But the drug addict's like this special category almost, or like a special subcategory of the criminal.
It's like that guy who had
because it's like their nature has changed. It's like when I think when I use the word vampire, it's kind of like the vampire needs to suck your blood to live.
Yeah.
Like in a classic parasitic sense.
Yeah.
The drug addict, basically by definition, and I mean like the Walking Dead of downtown and stuff.
Yeah.
They are the vampire, And so it's like it's like a different kind of issue almost, because it's like if you deal with like a wild animal or like a wild dog, and like it shouldn't be that way, but I think we like the left progressive harm mitigation system is encouraging that, and
maybe it's like
doesn't recognize it for the true evil it is. It's like they're human too, and it's like, yeah, they should be, but look what you've done to them.
So maybe it's also
And
like
it's like if you love someone, you wouldn't, or if you want what's best for someone, you wouldn't let them like destroy themselves, and that's what they're kind of doing.
there are methods out of these things. They're pretty tried and pretty tested and true. There's a path forward, but it's not fun.
So in Alberta, I think they said it was on the table, or they're going to look at it rather than, no, that's absurd. But
We'll see.
I think they said like, we'll look at involuntary like removal or incarceration, or like involuntary admission, or whatever they say.
Well, for example,
Which I don't know what that looks like, but I think that's just kind of an interesting piece of rhetoric in the environment where it's like none of the lefty progs want to do anything like that at all. So when the Alberta government's being like, your cities are screwed up and we'll basically like arrest people or put them somewhere,
yeah,
it's pretty gnarly.
like we have in Canada, do we have the like mandatory drug rehab?
I don't know.
We have mandatory judges can sentence people to complete like training. Like you have to do sexual addiction training, or like sensitivity training, or you have to do.
I guess if you get in front of a judge, like, are we talking about the street folks?
Yeah. So like, let's say they get busted.
Because I don't think they get busted.
Yeah. Well, okay. So they do get busted for breaking into cars. They do get busted for assaults. They get busted for like enough. So I don't think we have a mandatory drug rehab system.
It might almost be like not mandatory, but I mean, it's like, oh, you want to spend like 60 days in jail, you want to go to quote drug rehab unquote.
Yeah.
And in that case, I mean, it's mandatory, but in a sense you're choosing it. But it's like your punishment one way or another. And if you had the choice, you might go for that, because you're like, oh, okay, well then,
yeah,
I
wouldn't give them the choice. I would say mandatory. If you have drugs in your system when you commit a crime, minimum 6 months. Boom, you're in there. You're in a.
But for the ones like you say that are breaking into cars or like stealing from people and stuff, which is pretty much all of them except you get caught. But the thing is, they arrest the same people a lot over and over.
Yeah.
And some people commit way more crimes
because it takes a year to get your trial.
And yeah, so they like some people actually do have to be physically removed.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that looks like exactly, but
I say
I think you got to do it. And I don't like the cops, but I think the cops got to like clean them out.
So
because I mean, if your crappy public transit system is totally infested with like hostile crackheads,
and what percentage
that's not good. That's like the problem of the bum in the library, like stinking up, like
yeah.
Or the example I like, the guy who shits in the public pool.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to deal with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's public property. And yeah,
but it doesn't mean you can't manage it in a
you
reasonable
got to manage
manner.
it in a reasonable way.
Yeah. No one's going to fix this problem. It's never going to be fixed. But we can say that we're definitely going to make the problem worse by making drugs free and legal.
Well, I think you can, I think you can like reduce crime with like by using the cops.
Yeah.
Like New York City used to have like a couple thousand murders a year.
Yeah.
And they just basically started hanging out where there was more crime, because they had like their heat maps and like their analysis and stuff.
Well,
and
they also bent the rules. They allowed stop and frisk.
Stop and frisk was the rule.
With Giuliani.
It's like the broken windows policing thing.
With Giuliani. But before Giuliani, when it was really bad in the 70s and the early 80s. And then you have people like Gladwell.
Bloomberg,
Gladwell comes along and shits all over that theory too.
I don't even know what that is, but I know they stretched their rule or their policy, and then there was a court case, and they're like, oh, well, there's a test you got to apply as to whether it's like a reasonable stop or whatever, and but I'm saying like, because you were saying the problem's not going to get better, and I think you can actually reduce the disorder and the like the violence and the threats to people, like say on the C train or at the C train stations, and overall, like you can move it, but you can also reduce it overall with the cops, even though the cops are inefficient and typical government agency. Really, it's not good at what it does, but it's like the protection racket, and sometimes you need one gang to deal with a disorder that's coming from something else.
What if this is also like a Jeep problem?
No, it's not. It's like objectively 100%.
No, you're just noticing the crackheads now. You're just noticing them. No, they've always been there.
No, because
kids have always had fucking strokes.
Because
kids have always had strokes. Kids have.
Yeah, and they've always played video games,
and they've
which
always
caused the strokes.
They've always eaten eggs.
We're just letting you know this has always been a cause, and if there's suddenly a very weird stroke, that this is probably.
There's always been people smoking crack in and on the C train system.
No, I mean
you're just noticing the Jeep.
No, like
gaslight people into fucking.
And this is one of the things I don't think this gets enough attention, but like it's been taken over, so it's not like an isolated incident. It's like the crack train.
Yeah,
it's the mobile crack house, which it wasn't before. You might get the situation where like I've seen a guy smoke crack on the C train like long time ago. It happened once ever.
You saw
but now they own the system.
Yeah. So
that's different.
I noticed at rush hour.
And I feel bad at the best of times if you have to take public transit.
Yeah.
And especially if you have to deal with like crackheads and knife wielding maniacs and like the smoke from crack and stuff. And on the flip side, there is an aspect to this I disavow.
Okay.
But I may have told you this before, but the worst voters ever from, say, our perspective are correlated with two interesting things.
White and
government employment,
white and women,
and uses public transit. So, I mean, nothing would make me more delighted than to have Jayati ride the C train every day.
Yeah.
And be like, you deserve it. Like, I'm not feeling sorry for you.
Yeah.
And
it would be hard.
You're not a victim.
Yeah.
So there's an aspect.
This is within
I'm
your
just
power
putting it
to
out
correct.
there.
Yeah. Well, see, when I was in a position of taking transit, the terror of the transit system was the inebriated Aboriginal.
Yeah, I've seen inebriated Indigenous mans booted off buses,
Yeah.
like not regularly,
It
but
was
more than once, as opposed to the crackhead on the C train, which I saw once.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean like smoking crack on
Yeah.
the C train, like basically more or less openly.
Blowing smoke, like crack smoke on
The
kids.
yeah, the subtle exhale.
The jail toke.
But the yeah, you're right. That was
the terror,
thing.
and they were everywhere. So the question is this like they just made a better criminal? Like where? So if before the
more savage, because the crack is taken over.
Yeah, but did they push the drunk Indian out of the market?
Well, I think
Do you think-
a lot of the
don't
drug
think-
addicted tend to be like in Canada.
Yeah.
It's a lot of indigenous and whiteys.
Yeah. Not a lot of immigrants.
No, you don't see a lot of like black or brown homeless types, or Asian homeless types. But there's, you'll get like schizotypes who sometimes there's mental illness associated with it. But in general, it's like a metal concert. It's mostly whiteys. And it's mostly our nation's indigenous friends.
Yeah.
And it's the same with homelessness.
It's a dispossessed people.
Or crack addicted at the C train.
Yeah.
So the inebriated Indian was kind of a different kind of
Different
thing.
beast.
But
Yeah.
I've seen bus drivers like physically remove people from buses.
Yeah.
Or like, even just sternly yell like get off
Yeah.
or like no or whatever. And I don't know, there's always like a tolerance thing too, like it's lines. Where do people draw lines?
Yeah.
And a society is basically shaped by where it draws those lines.
Yeah.
From manners to dealing with dysfunction, like crackheads on the C train.
I find myself more willing to tolerate the inebriated indigenous than the crackhead. So I feel like
I think they were more likely to be funny and less dangerous.
I feel like
because
there's-
drunk people are sometimes like funny and like it's just kind of cartoonish, like
I just
what
do
happens.
my threat
But
assessment
these
of,
are
of
the
violence.
the zombie
Yeah.
hordes. Like they've kind of lost the humanity in a different way than a drunk person has.
Yeah. I'd like
Like a C train station is a blight upon a community.
Well, they have done the crime comparison for neighborhoods touching the Schumer
Oh yeah,
before and after, and what do you
Oh,
think? What do you think the increase was?
a lot, like 300% or something. It was something ridiculous.
It was
I
over.
remember.
It was over 100.
And like a lot of stuff, you just don't deal with it at all, because like the underreporting in that case, because nothing happens, is like even higher than usual, because you learn nothing happens. So 1 time out of 10 it's so bad that you report the crime. 9 times out of 10 you just live with it and you don't even bother. So it's even way worse than like the official crazy figures are. So yeah, our C trains are horrible. Just cost tons of money.
I'm now allergic to that argument.
What, C trains are horrible?
No, the unreported number, like there's 20 more sharks for every shark you see, and I'm kind of like, we only see one shark. We only know of one shark. Only one shark Finn has ever.
Well, what's wrong with what I just said though? Because if
'Cause
you're
it leads-
used to
it-
it, you don't report it anymore.
Because it leads to COVID numbers.
Well,
That's
that's in our favor too, because all the unreported stuff that's actually happening, and yet there's not piles of corpses in the street, is a sign that it's not as dangerous as we think. Whereas this, like, we can actually see the impact of, like,
For
we
every
can see the piles of needles, and we can see like the stuff that's missing from the store that was stolen.
for every Jeep you see, there's 20 Jeeps in the southeast or in the landfill.
Well, it's like the National Crime Victimization Survey they
Yeah.
use in the States versus like reported crimes. And it's, it's basically the best number because, again, a lot of things don't get reported. Like my car got broken into in Mortaloop all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but a lot. Like,
Enough.
did I ever report it? Never.
Did you file insurance?
No.
Yeah. So crimes under 500 just don't get
And
reported.
it's just one of those things you just deal with. So I think the crime, especially in that place where you get used to it and there's nothing good from reporting it anyway, other than some time down the tubes with no benefit, then I think the unreported thing is valid. So why would it be? You don't buy it anymore. You can't be fooled.
It's so fucking crazy. Like imagine 500, like imagine you had to walk 3 minutes to get $500. Would you do it?
3 minutes for $500 sounds
Yeah.
like a good deal.
Sounds like a great deal. But like the idea of like, I'm not going to phone my insurance company and fill out all this shit and do all this stuff because they don't cover anything.
But it's not just the $500 because you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
3 minutes for the 5, because it's more than 3 minutes. And then like, yeah, it's a pain.
But like,
and plus there's the added cost because your premiums might go up if you report it, and you need the police report to report it to insurance like sometimes. So that's
like, isn't
there's
that
hidden secret
isn't that
costs.
fucking absurd that someone does a value calc on their time, even though they have to pay for insurance, they have to pay for the cops, they have to pay for all these things, and they're like, it's so fucked up that I'm just not even going to bother.
No, it's horrible. It's basically just for like those critical emergencies that kind of tip the scales for it again.
And if you like look at
they stole some chocolate bars versus like they punched my daughter in the face and like stole all the money out of the cash register.
It depends. For example, look at regulated industries. Have you ever filled out a safety report?
Thank goodness, no.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no, I guess technically I have, but pretty minor in the context. But
on site, if you want a Band-Aid, you got to fill out a safety report.
Yeah.
You could nick yourself shaving, you got to fill out a fucking safety report. Look at all that time. Okay?
No, it's ridiculous.
Compliance and regulation. And it's just like, so apparently
fill out your near miss report.
Fill out your near miss report. Or anybody who wants to replace their glasses or like the glass on their car is going to have to like be like, well, I can't do it unless you got a police report.